You feel the mountain before you see it, a slow, heavy presence that presses against the sky. Mist clings to its flanks, not like weather but like intention, crawling along ridges and swallowing the traces of paths and pines. High above the valley, perched where human hands once thought to reach the heavens, the Shaolin Temple sits like a patient scar. Its walls are the color of ash, its courtyards etched by centuries of discipline and the tough, quiet violence that discipline sometimes breeds. Dawn has not yet come. The world still breathes the last cool breath of night, and yet one figure is awake. Wang kneels alone. He doesn't pray. His posture is not reverence so much as focus, a ritual of consequence. His right hand rests on the frozen stone. 4 fingers are relaxed. The index finger presses into granite. There is no tremor, no hesitation. Inside the temple, people whisper, Iron Finger Wang. They call him. Some say blessing, some say curse. No one denies that something about him has changed the rules. This is not a legend spun for appetite. This is a quiet human story about how endurance, obsession, and consequence can transform a person into a force that bends a community to its knees. Wang was not born remarkable. He was thin and forgettable, the kind of boy who slips through a crowd unnoticed, but he understood endurance in a way other children did not. Where play and diversion satisfied others, Wang answered only to ritual. He trained in the dark, pushed his limits in silence, came back the morning after being dismissed, hands trembling, eyes fixed on a future only he could see. That determination, practiced again and again, hardened into something beyond habit. The conditioning began simple, painfully specific, sand under feet until skin was bravery, gravel so that souls learned to argue with pain, iron beads heated and pressed against palm until the body stopped flinching and the mind reorganized its relationship to hurt. Tendons thickened, bones remodeled, nerves rerouted into a stock still and cold. Where a normal hand would bend and yield, his finger began to change. It hardened, it refused to behave as flesh. One day, his finger no longer bent like other fingers. It struck like metal. Word travels quickly through a world that respects strength. The first challenger came at midday, a wandering fighter with arrogance etched into his walk. He entered the courtyard with the swagger of a man certain of victory. Monks lined the perimeter, faces unreadable like storm clouds. Wang waited. He did not speak. The challenger lunged, a blur, fists meant to break bone. Wang moved not like a hero in a storybook, but like water finding the path of least resistance. He yielded, diverted, let force spend itself. Then, in a single clinical motion, his iron finger found its mark. No flourish, no wasted poetry. There is something almost cruel about precision. It removes drama and leaves result. The challenger's charge collapsed in an instant. Breath stopped, eyes widened. He crumpled onto the stone, convulsed once, then fell quiet. Silence slammed downward, thick and absolute, broken only by wind in the eaves. Wang didn't look. He walked away. It always begins like that, small, almost accidental. But tales of unchecked efficiency grow teeth fast. Men obsessed with displays of strength were drawn like moths to the flame of the story. Warriors came from provinces and cities, from underworlds where reputation is measured by scars. Each one believed he would be different. Each believed the myth would bend to his will. None did. Some fell instantly. Their arrogance, the tinder to Wang's single touch. Others pushed him, forced him to unmake them limb by limb, an ugly choreography of art and anatomy. The courtyard stones took note. They remember impact like memory records, impact like weather, the way sound patterns collect. The temple's quiet began to erode. Fear doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates in small things, averted gazes, empty seats at dawn, the soft closing of a door that used to be left open. As challengers stacked, fear grew, not of enemies from beyond the mountain, but of the man within their walls. Night brings a different kind of danger. This time, the ones who came were not blunt challengers, but shadows, assassins, trained and silent, sent to end a problem without drawing attention. They moved like the cold itself, slick and patient, their faces hidden, their intent absolute. Wang felt them before weapons slipped free. Intent has a weight you can learn to read. A shift in wind, the way silence thickens. He stepped aside as steel flashed past his throat. Then the courtyard became chaos. Bodies meeting moonlight, the sharp whisper of blades, the sudden punctuation of flesh against stone. Wang responded with an efficiency that was almost inhumane. His finger became a metronome of inevitability. Throats collapsed beneath a careful thrust, chests caved in under a precise angle of force, skulls snapped sideways into final stillness. One by one, the assassins fell, their speed, their coordination, their planning, irrelevant against the singularity of Wang's skill. When it was finished, the courtyard was a tableau of absence. Moonlight glinted off scattered steel. Wang stood breathing, his robes untouched by the stain of the fight, as if the act had shaved violence clean from his garments. He did not walk away this time. An old man watched from the shadows. The abbot, years of seeing the flux of power, talents rise and burn, had a face that had learned to measure not just strength but consequence. He understood, like anyone who studied the patterns of history, that power upsets balance. Power in a place organized around balance demands governance. And Wang had become something the temple could not contain. By dawn, decision made in the hush between two breaths, they must confront him. This confrontation was not a contest for glory, it was a containment. Senior monks encircled Wang like iron and resolve. Their stances were not practiced for show, they were meant to hold a place, to keep a thing from moving. The abbot spoke in a voice relieved of warmth. "You have become a danger." Wang's gaze did not waver. There was no anger, no confusion, only something that looks like acceptance, the kind that comes from knowing how far your own work has carried you and what it has cost. The attack was immediate and comprehensive. Stances met stances, a disciplined storm unleashed from every direction. Wang moved with a speed that blurred the boundary between reaction and inevitability. Monks, masters of their art, struck and pushed. A staff cracked against his ribs, a kick drove deep into his spine, a blade scored his shoulder. For the first time, pain returned, not as theory, but as a voice. Blood answered the practice that had turned him into a tool of singular purpose. Wang staggered. The circle tightened. It should have been the end. He lowered his hand, raised the iron finger, and stepped forward. What followed was not a fight so much as an erasure. Annihilation is a careful word and a dangerous one, because it implies not only defeat, but the removal of consequence. The courtyard became a field of after. Bones and staff and silent instruments of order lay scattered. When the echoes finally faded, the silence that remained was heavy enough to muffle thought. Wang stood alone in the center, chest rising, eyes hollow with a stillness that was not peace and not triumph, but inevitability. The abbot lay among the fallen, a look of shock frozen on his face, like a final question without an answer. The temple's rhythm, once built on the steady beat of rituals and the sound of wooden sandals, now resembled a graveyard. Wind moved through empty halls. Bells didn't ring. Chants did not rise. Only Iron Finger Wang remained. He turned, walked into the mist, and did not look back. There's a strange lesson in stories like this, the kind that keeps being told in different shapes across generations. The first is practical. Mastery changes you, not straight away, and not always in ways you intend. A repeated pattern, extended long enough and hard enough, reorders priorities. Pain becomes a tool, habit becomes armor, skill becomes a shape that will fit into some world and not into another. The second lesson is social. Power needs governance. Temples, towns, organizations, all rely on a shared contract. Strength gives protection, restraint keeps order. When someone steps so far outside that contract, the community is left to answer a question it may not have the tools to ask. Do you rein someone in? Do you celebrate them? Do you destroy them? Those are not simple moral questions. They are mechanical ones about how a society preserves itself. The third lesson is personal and the most uncomfortable. Inevitability is lonely. Mastery isolates you. People come to test you, to learn from you, to pit themselves against you. When you become the standard, everyone else must relate to that standard in a way that changes them. Those who can't adapt are left behind or are consumed. The person who becomes a weapon, or who is perceived as one, ends up moving through a world tilted to protect or avoid them. It's an existence with a shape you can't easily enjoy. Wang's story asks us to sit with contradictions. Discipline can liberate and enslave. Power can protect and devour. Mastery can be virtuoso and blunt instrument. The narrative doesn't need to choose a side. It's enough that it shows how a life carved by relentless purpose bends the structures around it. There's also beauty in the way nature witnesses all this. Mist keeps its slow company. The stones remember each impact. Dawn follows night, whether a temple stands or falls. The mountain remains, indifferent and steady. The cycle continues. People come and people leave. The legend grows because humans are skilled at turning consequence into myth. If you imagine Wang walking into the mist, you're picturing a man who has reached the edge of what his world could handle. He's not celebrated, not redeemed. He's inevitable. That's a different kind of ending from the one that rewards villains or exalts heroes. It's more like an observation. Actions stack until the system shifts. Systems respond. Sometimes the response is ritual and restraint. Sometimes it's confrontation. Sometimes it's ruin. The story remains useful because it asks a question you can frame for your own life, whether or not you ever pick up beads or press your finger to stone. What happens when skill is divorced from context? What happens when your standard outpaces the society or rules meant to keep that society functioning? And perhaps most importantly, what are the costs of becoming the thing everyone speaks of in the silence between sunrise and the first bell? There's no neat moral at the end. The courtyard doesn't cleanse itself. The stones don't forget. People may come again, to remember, to mythologize, or to bury what happened. And in the mist, Wang continues, a silhouette that is both human and monument. So when you walk through your own life and notice the habits that animate it, pay attention. Mastery is a powerful shape. Let it be accompanied by context. Let your strength have a steward. The alternative is a slow accumulation. One more test, one more challenger, until the balance you relied on rearranges itself without asking your permission. The ambient tone shifts, a gong faintly resonant. And if you listen closely, beyond the myth and the violence, you'll hear something else, the wind, indifferent and patient, moving across stone and pine. It remembers everything. It also graciously forgets some things. In between, people and temples find ways to rebuild, or they do not. The story lingers because it asks us to look at how we shape ourselves and how what we become shapes those around us. Music holds a single note, then fades.